Hari Bol.
Shri Guru Vaishnava Mahatmya Gita ki
Jai.
Narottam Das Thakur ki.
Jai.
I just love that, we read this translation every time, but I really particularly like the intro, Shri Guru and His Grace, has a very nice paragraph. And this entire book is actually very interesting because it is on the premise of, hi everyone. It's on the premise of the divine teacher, which is actually like an eternal principle. And like what it said in the East is very amazing. It says when that sincere call comes out, actually, that the universe is immediately reciprocating and that the divine guide is always coming. And the ability to recognize the divine guide is as much grace as, like there's so many, actually they're saying the whole environment is trying to communicate with us at all times, but we don't have the ability to actually decipher what's being said to us. Right, so they say the flowers are actually communicating something to the bees, and the trees are communicating something along the leaves, and the rivers are communicating what to speak of all of the humans that are trying to communicate to each other and possibly missing each other, right? So actually the whole environment is giving so much information. But ultimately there's a calling out, right? That's what kirtan has to do with, very much a calling out. And a calling out, and there's reciprocation. That's actually where we're starting to get to the root of this word yoga. So this idea of the divine guide is the most mysterious and wonderful conception actually that's coming from the East. And it's a very beautiful one. And of course, just like anything, like the most beautiful thing when it's not in its most beautiful form becomes the most ugly thing, right? And so that's all of these kinds of the rough false summits that are on the path are where like the teacher's actually helping us learn about where not to go. So, but this sentence particularly,
Joy.
it's a really short one, but it's very nice. So it's the introduction paragraph to Shri Guru and His Grace, which is the entire book is on the nature of Guru. So, to err is human. To err is inevitable for all, being not perfect. Still, no one wants to remain imperfect, and there is an element within all that is animate that tends towards perfection. If it were not so, we would feel no want at all. Our tendency towards perfection is certainly very weak and limited. Otherwise, we could attain the goal at once. Our limited capacity and tendency for perfection makes room for the guide or the guru. So this is like the intro paragraph of this book. It's a very beautiful idea, and it's really like an important exercise. It's, if we were just using our very powerful or not powerful minds as you view, to feel ecstasy in all moments, and you're not feeling ecstasy in all moments, that means, because it's not like we haven't exhausted a lot of strategies, or maybe all of our strategies. Everyone has kind of like a kind of predisposed sort of addiction to the way that they want to deal with things, and then we're kind of like enacting these like patterns on the environment, and then they're coming back to us. And generally speaking, they rarely come back in the form of like pure ecstasy or joy, right? And they say actually the nature of the infinite is consciousness that is imbued with ecstasy, actually, right? That's what we're searching for, is ananda. So then if we're trying to do all of these machinations with our own minds, and ecstasy and perfection aren't coming, that literally opens up the very curiosity and the premise for what does the divine guide actually symbolize. So it's a very beautiful practice, and that's really what we're thinking about with Shri Guru Charana Padma, searching lifetime after lifetime for a deeper and deeper connection with divinity and with becoming a lover of reality instead of kind of an exploiter of reality, we can say. And it's a very like dignified and wondrous and beautiful quest. So that's the intro. I have always appreciated very much that intro paragraph, and just thought of it while we were reading Shri Guru Charana Padma. So we can sing the next song.
Okay, 82.
gonna find it.
What are we looking for?
How about page 58? Julia, do you want to send us? 58?
58? Okay. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Jive Daya Kori
Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Jive
Saraswaya Dana Sahavatari Chaitanya, being gracious upon the Jiva souls, along with your associates in abode, you descended to this world.
To distribute freely the love divine most rare, by teaching exclusive surrender, the life and soul of the devotee.
Humility, self-giving, embracing his guardianship, Krishna will certainly protect me, maintaining this faith.
Acceptance of all activities favorable to devotion, embracing rejection of adversity to devotion.
Those who surrender in this sixfold way, their prayer will be heard by the divine Son of Nanda.
Taking in his mouth a straw, falling at the lotus feet of Sri Rupa Sanatana, Sri Bhakti Vinod clasps their lotus feet.
Weeping, weeping, I implore thee, though I am a fallen, please teach me to surrender, teach me pure devotion.
Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur ki
Jai.
I'll just say a couple words on this song because it's very fundamental. You know, we read these songs, we sing these songs, they're in a very simple Bengali actually. But the conception that's being put forth is extremely deep, profound, and sophisticated. This word, Sharanagati, which is the name of this song, is a very, very deep word. It's a conjunct word in Sanskrit. It means it's composed of two words. The first word is Sharana, the second word is Agati. And it's a really, truly foundational reset of our relationship with our life, of our relationship with our environment. It's a change of our conscious posture. So if you think about our existence, and this is a very important principle, our existence is actually composed of our own perspective. We think that we're living in an objective reality, but we're not. We're living in a subjective reality. And the way that we experience our reality is our reality. But it's not the same way that somebody else is experiencing it. So to reset our experience of reality, to reset our relationship reality, is to reset ourselves. And this concept is so wonderful. Actually, some of the yoga teachers have said, if you can understand the efficiency, the efficacy of this concept, then you'll try to practice it at every moment. There's so many things you can do in life, but this conception will change everything. Reset the world that you're living in, because ultimately the world that you're living in is being generated by you. Right? It's being generated by your perspective. So Sharanagati means, it's being translated as surrender in English, which is a good word. Surrender, it implies this type of resistancelessness. But the words in Sanskrit, Sharana means like shelter or home, or like a place where you're loved and safe. Okay, that's Sharana, you're shelter, you're searching for shelter. If you're in a windstorm, you're searching for shelter, right? Some place where you're free of the elements, and some place where there's some feeling of home. So Sharana and Agati means come. So coming to shelter is being translated as surrender, but it means fundamentally in your practice of life is that you start to experience these waves with a foundation of positivity. That something at the basis of reality loves me. And this experience is coming to me from a place of goodness and love. Where I was saying this concept of guru. The environment is communicating with you all the time, but we can't hear it because we're too busy with our own agenda. We're too busy with our own imposition of our own processing on it, right? But actually, sweetness is coming to us. The whole environment, Guru Maharaj says, wants to pull you towards your engagement, wants to pull you toward your fulfillment. And Sharanagati is the basis of Bhakti Yoga. It means God is good, the environment is good, and something beneficial is coming to me. And to start to interact with every moment with that basis. So, very deep concept, very foundational, hopeful, positive concept. And honestly, when you practice it for some time, especially going through something that you would call really, really bad, and recognizing over time that it's good, then you can understand the truth of this. and everything becomes hopeful. And it's actually true. So, communicating some idea of Sharanagati, hopefully. Okay.
Yeah, I think like consciousness is reality, not physical matter around us.
True.
And to, begin to work in that direction, to see, because that's our life force, that's who we are. So if we try to begin to perceive, like in that context, and not in the context of our perception of the physical reality, but rather to perceive in the context of I am soul. And then of course, what is the nature of the soul? The soul has an eternal connection with the Supreme Soul. So the function of human life is to first to perceive that, and secondly, having perceived that, then to begin to look towards understanding what is my position as a soul, what is my position as a spirit. And that position is that we're eternally connected to the Supreme Soul, and we do have a function, and the function is not seeking after temporary relief in the temporary world, but rather the function is to connect with our eternal serving nature in relation to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We have that chance in human life, and we have that rare, amongst all the animal species, we have that rare ability to begin to perceive that. So, like understanding that chance that we all have, then it's like, on us to acknowledge that and begin to act in that direction. And as we act in that direction more and more, the inner confirmation will come to us. It's just a matter of like even theoretically accepting and then taking the step and trying it, you'll get some reciprocation. So that's the whole point. It's reality. So all we have to do is try to walk in that direction, and reality will reciprocate with us.
I don't know who was asked, maybe Goswami Maharaj. They were like, we're talking about reality, and you would do yourself well to become acquainted with it. Was it Maharaj, where he said you would do yourself well to become acquainted with it, which is a quite intense sentence. It is Ekadasi, so, for those of you who are not familiar, the Vedic calendar is a lunar calendar, and every 2 weeks, on the 11th day of the moon, if you want to know, Eka is 11, Dasi, on the 11th day of the moon, we don't eat grains. And so, today, even here at the temple, we do not have any grains, and there's a couple of special songs that are always sung on the 11th day of the moon. So, and the idea of Ekadasi is kind of like an interesting and mysterious day, but to summit spiritual life must have a few essential components, and one of them is sacrifice. Right? Surrender and sacrifice are inherently part of the path. And so as you search all over the world, there's like customs of fasting that happen all the time. And what's interesting about fasting, which is funny because it's come back into vogue after long last. But what's interesting about fasting, the idea is that if you're going to give up something, your attention, you'll realize, one, how much attention you're getting drawn into that thing. And it's supposed to be like you have a little extra time. And which is true, right? You start to realize how many times you've like opened up the fridge or something like that very quickly when you fast. And then you're starting to go like, oh, right? Because one of the practices, there's 9 practices of bhakti. One of them is remembrance. So then what becomes highlighted is, why do we have a practice of remembrance? It's because we're covered in like a very, very interesting, like very nebulous layer of forgetfulness. And so sacrifice is quite purifying actually, and it helps us kind of like realign and refocus. So you can say like an auspicious day like Ekadasi, it's considered a very helpful day to discuss things that are helpful for the culture of practicing spiritual life. That's what's said in the scriptures. It's like a highlighter day to spend some extra time in remembrance and to kind of put a little bit of extra focus on it. And I can just speak for myself, certain conversations that have happened on Ekadasi have managed to ripple decades into the future, and I still take so much sustenance from them. I felt like some mercies coming on Ekadasi. So it's a very nice day. It's a simple kind of practice in a certain sense. We just don't eat grains. And then there's a couple kirtans. Do you want to, I mean, Sudabhakta is a sibling, right? You want to sing?
Or let's sing Sri Hari Bol.
Up to you. What do you want to sing? Me? I was going to think you. I'm in Sudabhakta.
Okay.
What page?
288.
Unless we want to sing. They're both kind of interesting songs. I mean,
Sri Hari Bol, Sri Hari.
you'll sing Sri Hari Bol. You want to sing it first? Okay, we'll start off 285. Yeah, this is only sung on Ekadasi. The other one we sing sometimes on Ekadasi, but.
Shri Hari Vasare Hari Kirtana Nidhan Shri Hari Nrityoyarambhila Prabhu Jagatera Pran Nrityoyarambhila Prabhu Jagatera
once on the auspicious day of Ekadasi, in the house of Sripad Pandit, Srimad Mahaprabhu inaugurated congregational Nam Sankirtan with great enthusiasm, accompanied by his devotees and associates.
Surging in divine ecstasy, Srimad Mahaprabhu, the life and soul of the universe, began to dance beautifully. The devotees surrounded him by being deeply touched and inspired by such ecstatic moments, and they also began to dance and sing the holy names like Gopal, Govinda.
The combined sound vibrations of mridanga, temple bells, kartals, and shankar in harmony with the congregational singing and dancing took everyone to the plane of transcendental delight.
The holy vibration of Sankirtan filled the sky and spread through the ether all over the cosmic universal existence. Thus the atmosphere in all directions became purified and filled with auspiciousness by that divine sound.
In all four directions, the auspicious chanting of the Lord's name spread, and in the center of that sound vibration, the son of Jagannath Mishra, Srimad Mahaprabhu, danced.
Everyone was decorated with fragrant sandalwood paste and beautiful garlands. The most wonderful rhythmic sound arose from the dancing footsteps of Srimad Mahaprabhu, which captivated the minds of the devotees. As he continued dancing in his own self-born ecstasy, the swinging flower garlands around his neck began to fall, decorating the earth. The devotees beheld before their eyes this rare and precious heart-captivating, ecstatic dance of the supreme tattva, Shukuranga, who is the most worshipable object in even the great personalities such as Lord Shiva, Shukla, Narada, and others.
Being totally overwhelmed and lost in the transcendental bliss of taking Mahaprabhu's holy name, Lord Shiva sometimes does not care for his formal appearance or obligation to retain his clothing, which sometimes falls down while he dances in the ecstasy of loving devotion.
By chanting and meditating upon his holy name, Sri Valmiki became a great powerful rishi, and Ajamila became pure liberation.
As one hears and takes his holy name with devotion, embracing its holy potency within the core of their heart, the existence becomes totally purified, and they attain deliverance, such as the Lord, the source of incarnations, in his dancing form in all age of Kali.
The pure devotees, Sri Shukadev and the Varts Narada are always blissfully engaged in releasing the nectar of his holy name and distributing it to suitable jiva souls wherever they travel. Even Anantadeva describes his unlimited glories with thousands of mouths.
All penance and chanting of the Lord's name is supreme, and whoever sees the dancing of the Lord in his form as Sri Chaitanya is supremely fortunate soul.
The two brothers, Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Nityananda Prabhu, are my beloved masters in my life and soul. Thus Vrindavan thus sings his songs their glorification and devotionally offers it at their lotus feet.
Thakur ki jai.
I just want to say a name because there's so much in these words, but this word in verse 13, Sarva Mahaprayashchitta. Prayashchitta is a very interesting component of Vedic culture. Prayashchitta means when you do something wrong and you know you did something wrong, you have to atone for it immediately. There's not this idea of I want to get away with it, or I want to get out of it, or I don't want to receive any consequence. It's that like a person of some spiritual depth will immediately think, I want to atone for this immediately. So the culture is, if you do something wrong, you'll go into the mountains or the forest or something and do some penance. And atone for that, or go on a tour to all the holy places and walk there, right? Walk a few hundred miles, that kind of thing. There'd be some type of atonement that you do immediately. And what this is saying is Sarva Mahaprayashchitta, the real atonement, the greatest atonement, is just to say the name of the Lord, just to chant the name of the Lord. That's like the greatest atonement that will absolve you of all the vibrations from all the sins and exploitations that we've done in our past. Just take the name of the Lord. So, very beautiful idea there. Okay, and then maybe one more song,
I have some questions.
please.
There was one word. What does the word akasha mean?
Ramandeo Tila in that verse.
Yeah, Akasha, that's a interesting you picked that out. Have you heard that term before?
Yeah, I have, in a different sense though.
Sometimes people say the Akashic scrolls or
Yeah.
something like that. Yeah, that's referring to this word. And Akasha is, you could say it's a metaphysics concept in Vedic, in Vedic philosophy. And it doesn't really have like a correspondent in modern physics.
Yeah.
But you can say Akasha is the unmanifest material energy, maybe, is a way of saying that. It's the energy from which all the energies that we perceive in the way that they are springs.
Yeah.
So it's sort of this baseline energy that's underneath the manifest world of our perception.
I've seen it being expressed as like a library,
Yeah.
you know, like
The
a.
Akashic record.
Yeah.
The Akasha, but see, it's almost like an electromagnetic principle because energy travels through Akasha. So when it says Brahmande Utila Dwani Puriyaya Akash, it's saying this vibration from this kirtan is traveling throughout the universe through the Akasha. So the whole universe is being benefited through this this chanting. Is what that's saying. That there's that the vibration there's a vibrational plane from which things become manifest is maybe a way of saying it. So you can kind of think of it in a quantum physics as the wave of potential, maybe.
Yeah.
But it's a place from which energy is there, and it manifests from.
Could I add something to that?
Please.
A little thing. It's like when we talk about the holy name of the Lord, every single living being, no matter what his situation is, no matter what his problems are, no matter what kind of body he has, there is one thing that can completely solve every problem. So, and that is surrender, changing our angle of vision and seeing that divine will is the absolute sweetness that we're all looking for. And the holy name therefore can pierce through anything and travel to anywhere and actually find the home that any living being is searching for, he will find there. So that's kind of another way, right, to understand that it is traveling throughout every plane of consciousness and reaching every possible, conceivable understanding of any kind of perception. That name is the one thing that can pierce through all of that. And that's just another angle about this.
Yeah, thank you. I also have a question about the word Gaia in verse 11.
Kaya Pindadata.
Gaya. So Gaya is actually a place in India. It refers to a place. And Gaya Pinda means, Gaya Pinda Data means, Pinda means this ceremony that you do when your father has, when one of your parents has passed for the benefit of the soul that's departed. So that's referring to that. Where is it saying? What verse is
Jara
it?
Guna Gaya.
Verse.
Sahara Sabakara. Prabhu Jara Guna Gaya.
Oh, Gaia. Oh, sorry. I thought you said Gaia. I thought you said
Gaia.
Gaia up into. That's a different Gaia. This Gaia just means sing.
Sing.
Yeah. There's
Oh, Gaia.
Goya with a low A, small, like lower A, longer at the end, and this is long A in the beginning, lower A. So Gaia, this Gaia just
The
means
other.
sing. Sorry.
I thought you said Gaia.
Rookie mistake.
There's another song. There's another song about Mahaprabhu that says Gaia Pinda Data.
So the next song will be recorded for our website, like Kirtan Center website. So No, but if everybody's fine with being like on the video, like what we're gonna film.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
It's page
169.
169.
So everybody chant with heart.
Yeah.
169.
169. Bajahure mana.
No.
I said the mic for the Sudarshan. I said everything for Sudarshan.
That's 1,000 times better singer than us.
I would need like at least 5 minutes to change everything.
5 minutes.
And it's like 4 cameras rolling.
Oh my god. Why is there so many cameras? Well, do you want to sing Bajahure mana?
I'd rather you sing.
Okay. I have to say, we weren't really paying attention to the cameras.
Where do you want me to move?
Oh my god, that's
There's
just so.
technical adjustment, there's not really time.
I think it's gonna catch the cartels a lot, though. Is it gonna catch the cartels a lot?
Yeah, it should be a close. Yeah,
It
maybe
catches
you
the
don't
Dandavat a lot.
play them like that.
Huh?
Like you can keep playing them.
Oh, can I have some small ones? I can't like not play it all, but.
Can you just see if anybody can see a hat or some boxes on it?
It's good.
It's on the
Does
table.
anybody see
It's
a
on the
hat?
table.
A hat?
On the table in the room.
Okay, thank you.
They're just here,
The Madonna with the mic.
believe it or not, shopping for cartels is a whole thing. Okay, I think our 5 minutes is up.
It's only 3 minutes.
I'm so glad we don't do this often. Nani, do you have cartels? Oh, where are you going? Okay, we'll read the translation beforehand so we know what we're singing.
Wow.
Yeah. Pivot. Yeah. Zoom. Okay. Vajahure mana Shri Nandanandana. Oh mind. Hari Bol. Oh mind. Just worship the lotus feet of the son of Nanda which make one fearless. You want to know the words? Abhaya is the word for fearless. A before something is the opposite. So Bhaya means fear and Abhaya means fearless. Having obtained this rare human birth, cross over this ocean of worldly existence to the association of saintly persons. So this is like the trade secret of spiritual life, is you're trying to always find more realized people to be in their proximity. Their realizations on the universe are most valuable. And you know, there's like these examples given in the scriptures. There's like a never-ending, ephemeral, endless ocean that can't be navigated, that you're getting tossed and turned in. And with one change of perspective, that same ocean is just the same amount of water that is in the hoof print of a calf, right? So they're saying that's the possibility of being near someone who actually has a realization on the nature of reality. Both in the day and at night, I remain sleepless, suffering the pains of the heat and cold, the wind and the rain. For a fraction of flickering happiness, I've uselessly served wicked and miserly men. What assurance of real happiness is there in all of one's wealth, youthfulness, sons, and family members? This life is tottering like a drop of water on a lotus petal. Therefore, you should always serve and worship the divine feet of Lord Hari. So this is when we're also talking about Sharanagati or coming to shelter. What's important to remember is that we are actually all taking shelter of many things. And one of the bigger problems that causes us tremendous amounts of fear and anxiety is that the shelters that we're taking shelter of are actually unstable. So this poet is talking about that here, saying, yeah, okay, you're gonna take shelter in youth. Like, you won't be the first, and you're certainly not gonna be the last to try that strategy, but you know. And it gets darker and darker the more you're clinging. Your face could look stranger and stranger. So it's like this idea of taking shelter, right? We're taking shelter of our family, but this idea, this meditation that life is tottering like a drop of water on a lotus petal, it's very deeply highlighting, right? And it is actually like a fantastic thing in the true like idea of the word fantastic, because there is like an AI Band-Aid aspect of the ego and the mind that does not want to deal with that, right? So there's a very famous conversation in the scriptures where Death, who is Dharma, he comes to test his son in disguise, and his son is a great king. And it becomes this very famous conversation. He asks his son, what is the most amazing thing, right? And his son responds, you know, he gives an analogy of the world, right? Where he says like, you know, the earth is a frying pan and time is the cook and everyone everywhere is dying and everyone that looks around thinks it's not gonna be me. This is the most amazing thing. And then he like finishes the sentence and they're making plans, right? Where it's like this like, whoa, you know. And that conversation, really, like you read it and that particular part is like the crescendo of that conversation because you feel that so much. Where it's like, despite getting so many messages that we're not going to be here in this particular form eternally, and we're making all these plans to like be happy and all these things, there's like a much deeper journey that's simultaneously occurring. So he's saying that. What are you taking shelter of? It is the desire and great longing of Govinda Das to engage himself in the 9 processes of bhakti. Namely, hearing the glories of Lord Hari and chanting those glories, constantly remembering him and offering prayers to him, serving the Lord's lotus feet, serving the Supreme Lord as a servant, worshiping him with flowers and incense and so forth, serving him as a friend, and completely offering the Lord one's very self. So there's all of these different avenues. And as we hear in Bhagavad Gita, right, you can offer me a fruit or a flower or water, any of these things, and I will reciprocate with them. They just have to have some devotion. So now the drama is escalated a little bit, right? Because the supreme controller, the Anadir Adar Govinda Sarvakarna Karanam of the universe, he doesn't need actually a sip of water, he doesn't need a leaf, he doesn't need a flower, but he's reciprocating with the love of his devotee. And then serving him as a friend, I also find a very sweet closure to this kirtan because, you know, there's so many aspects where we're afraid or we're feeling like that there's the ultimate judger and all these kinds of aspects of divinity, but he's like, you know, and the Lord one's very self, which is very sweet, which is who you are. You're offering who you are in whatever state that it happens to be in. It's not like the upper world is unaware of the glaring shadowy faults that we happen to be curating. And it's like a nice offering in a sense, not the version or the facade of who I want to present myself as, but who I am. Offering, and with like a soft heart, right? As a friend, friendly, you know, like such a sweet kind of closure to this song, right? So many advices in 4 short verses are coming from Govinda Das.
That's a really wonderful thing about Krishna consciousness, that there's no like preliminary requirements. You just have to try to offer yourself. Krishna doesn't care about our past. Our past is like one of billions in the material universe. It's that's just how it is. But what he wants to see is our attempts to, you know, come closer to him and develop love for him. That he wants to see. And if we try that even just a little bit, he'll see that and not the mess that we've gotten ourselves into. He doesn't really care about that. He cares about our love and helping us to develop and reawaken our love for him. Krishna is so kind. He's always merciful to us. And as we, you know, progress through our development in Krishna consciousness, we should always like remember that Krishna is with us. He'll help us. He'll always be there to help us. We're not alone. The material world is so sad that we feel like we're alone in this place having to deal with all these problems and obstacles. But, you know, ultimately Krishna is the controller, and if we take shelter of him, he'll be with us. And he'll be along with us as we meet the different difficulties. And he'll always help us. We just have to remember that, and remember to pray to Krishna to strengthen our, our connection with him and our attachment for him.
Okay. Bajahure mana Shri Nandana Abhaya Charanara Vindore
Jai Sankirtan ki jai.
Jai.
Maharaj ki jai.
Jai.
Shri Rupan Guru ki jai.
Jai.
Everyone participating in Kirtan today, thank you very much. All the devotees ki jai.
Jai.
Go Premanande Hari Bol. Jai
Jai.
Sripad Nyasi Maharaj ki jai. Okay, we have just a small amount of time. If anyone has a topic or question or comment, anything.
I was thinking about regret when you were talking about surrender before, because it's easy to think back on like a mistake you made and think like, oh, I didn't surrender, that was my problem. But really, like, it's that moment that you're thinking about it that you should be surrendering.
Nice, yeah. Yeah, it's very easy. You know, one particular spiritual life is very all-encompassing. But one particular angle of the progression of spiritual life is that you can conceive that we're actually moving to living in the present. Sometimes we think we're living in the present, but really we're not. And we're, you know, sometimes the scriptures use the term estranged. We are estranged by past and future. And so we never actually experience this moment outside of the anticipation of what that next thing is going to be, or outside of some type of like, oh, I shouldn't have done that, and now that's why I'm in this, you know, right? There's some estrangement where you're not actually living. And you can't really live in the present, actually, as an animal. It's very difficult. In animal consciousness, it's said that in an animal, you're always filled with some conception of fear. And fear means what? Fear means fear of the future. Right? That's what it means. It means something is going to happen that's bad, right? And I have to or something happened in the past that I can't get over, right? This is what's causing this suffering in me now. And there's some obsession of the past, and there's some obsession on the future. And sometimes we're just imposing our desires on the future. In our material mind, it's very difficult to conceive of infinite possibility, and it's very, very difficult to conceive of ourselves without our past. So, the practice of Sharanagati is really about bringing us into the future, into the present, excuse me. Sorry. See? Thing about the future. One amazing practice to kind of get over the past is Tatenu Kampam Susamikshama. There's a great verse that's spoken in a Purana called the Bhagavad Purana, and it's spoken by Lord Brahma. Lord Brahma, in the Vedic conception, there's not just a multiverse, there's like an infinity of other universes. We're in one universe, as vast and inconceivable as it is. There are many, 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 many other universes. And there's a play within this universe where the creator of this universe, the Lord, is playing in his role as like a cowherd boy. He's playing as a cowherd boy in a small village, and he's dirty, and he's like, getting pulled around by cows in the dirt, holding onto the tail and stuff. And in his play, he kills a great demon named Aghasura. And when that demon is killed, his soul goes up into the sky, into space. And it's attracting the attention of the kind of guardian beings of this universe, you could say, the demigods. And then it goes down and into the foot of Krishna, who at this time is like a 6-year-old cowherd boy. So Lord Brahma sees this and he's like, wait, what was that? Right? And there's a whole Leela, but he tries to mess with the Lord and see what happens. And there's a whole Leela of this where he starts to think eventually, are you my Lord? How is this? You're in this village in the forest playing with the cow and no one knows you're there? How could my Lord be playing this type of intimate Leela? And who are these people that he's with that I can't even think to be in their association? They're so high, having this intimate relationship with the Lord, right? And his heart is kind of cracked, and he speaks this very long prayer, but this is one shloka within that prayer, and it's very beautiful. Tatenu kampam susamikshimano bhunjana evatma kritam vipakam hridvagvapur bhir vidathan namaste jiveta yo mukti pade sadaya bhak. And the meaning of this verse will actually help us to harmonize everything in our life. And generally what we're harmonizing is something that has occurred, right? Something that has already occurred and I haven't made my peace with it, right? And the verse, in a simple way says, Tate anukampam susamikshimano, means we have to start having some auspicious meditation within ourselves. What is it within me that is inviting this type of feeling? What is it within me that has created this circumstance that I find myself in? Right? Munjana eva atma kritam vipakam. Atma krita, I did this. There's something within me that is causing this disharmony within me, my relationship with my environment. So nothing wrong is happening to me. And I have to turn into this wave that I don't want to turn into. In a posture of namas. Means expose yourself, feel it, and bow to it. It's coming from the Lord, and it has good within it. And then Jiveta Yomukti Padesa Daiva. If you can do this, every moment of your life will be bringing you to freedom. Very beautiful practice to make peace with what has occurred. This is proper. Let me experience it all the way. Let me find the lesson. Let me find the jewel hidden within this. Approach it with a mood of hope, and also that yes, something within me needs to be adjusted. That's not surprising, right? Well, what do you think it's going to feel like? I mean, generally for everyone, change is uncomfortable, right? It's okay. And this practice in your life, when you realize something really, really difficult that is occurring to you has goodness within it, your relationship with the future changes. Because what that means is something good came to me and I didn't recognize it. And the premise of Vaishnavism is that God is your friend. God is your friend, He's not your enemy. So if something is coming to you for you to experience and deal with, then it's coming from sweetness and goodness. And you go through that, you must go through this. Guru Maharaj says, you must go through this once in your life. You have to be going through something that you don't want to go through and experience it as good, authentically. And when you do that, then you look at the future differently. Oh, what's going to come to me is good. God really is my friend. This thing came to me in a way that I didn't expect, and it was good. So the past can be harmonized by this practice, and then the future becomes not like an uncertain wave of fear, but actually something that's exciting to be experienced. And when you're not concerned about the future and you've harmonized the past, then you can actually live, right? Because we're so constrained by fear. That's what this song we just sang is. Like, how can you actually live without fear? That's an important question to be asked in life. And the way you can live without fear is to know nothing wrong can occur to me. The Lord is my friend. And actually move into the present. So, if you have regrets or all these kinds of things, it's not real. You're alive right now. And all that stuff's in the past. Like, make your peace with it and be alive right now, today. Because you have some service and some contribution to make, and we all do, right now. There's absolutely no necessity to live in the past. Like, what was the Bhaktivinoda Thakur? Forget the past that sleeps, and never the future dream at all. But act in times that are with thee, and progress thee shall call. It's a way of living a progressive existence in the moment. And there's so much that we can do with every present moment, but we find ourselves ruminating on the future and the past. We're actually alive right now. So.
I would just say, just one small thing. I mean, it's a huge topic because there's a variety of reasons that sensation comes to us. The word, what we were talking about, prayashchitta, and the scriptures do have some interesting advice when it comes to when we have done something wrong. That's generally the feeling of regret comes from when we have done something, thought, word, or deed that's harmed someone, and then we're feeling a bit crunchy about our behavior. So in the scriptures it says, the first prayashchitta that we can do is we have to try to make amends in the same way that we've done the wrong. So if we've said something with our words that causes harm to someone, then we have to appeal and apologize with our words, right? So we don't, like, if we've said something in writing towards someone, then we're trying to make that up in writing, right? So there is, and that is like this huge, right? Like that kind of goes into that prayer, you know, like I asked God for humility and He gave me experiences to not be proud of, right? Because it's just, I don't know, like I remember being told to apologize when I was little and going like, oh my God, could the earth just like literally chomp on me right now because it just feels like you're dying. But maybe that's what is happening, is something in you is dying, right? And like that's what we're talking about ultimately, is like this idea of die to live. It's not that my physical body dies, but it's like maybe some of this stuff that I equate with who I think I am has to die, and it's just as painful as if we're dying. So then there's this idea of the same way. So if we've done some action physically, words, writing, whatever it is, try to make amends. But then what comes back, right, just like Bhagavad Gita says, we're not the controller of whether that person has, you know, gracefully decides to absolve us of what we've done, and that feeling can persist. And we may not be able to, and we have to tolerate, right? That's like an aspect of spiritual life, is I invited this, and I try to offer to the environment something, but still some feeling may persist. And then also, it's not like, who are we to like demand that I'm supposed to feel happy now, you know? And then it's like, okay, then you let that thing, right? That's what this also tate anukampam, like it washes over you, and you're allowing it to do its work. And then there's not necessarily like a timeline where it's like, okay, 2 weeks. And then there's also like the deeper sacrifice, where not only do I accept this sensation that's coming to me, but now I'm trying to actually like direct myself in an offering of sacrifice. And whatever you want to give me, right? That's how Bhakti Thakur is able to say these times. You want to put me in heaven? You want to put me in hell? Like, that's okay. I just want to try to remember you. I just want to try and stay inside. Like, you want to put happy or sad? That's not becoming like the North Star of my life, right? Because it's an unreliable kind of guidepost. So you're saying like, okay, this thing's washing over me because the very source of reality is good, and there's so much trust in that. Yes, I'll allow this feeling, right? Because otherwise, why would it say? It's very mysterious. The most quoted verse of our like Srila Govinda Marsh, like most quote, and by a long shot, is the third verse of Mahaprabhu, Trinadapi Sunijena, which means to be more humble than a blade of grass, more tolerant than a tree, to give honor to others and not expect it for yourself. If you can practice these 4 seemingly simple and small and quick to say practices, then you actually can chant kirtan, right? It's like over and over we're hearing, like especially when we're younger, and it's like you're going, okay, so what's hiding inside of those qualities, right? And so then there's some expansion given where it's like, okay, you can kind of fake humility to some extent, right? But tolerance, by the nature of that word, it means there's something on your shoulders that you don't want to bear. And what the scriptures are saying is there can be something wonderful, some mysteriousness, some revelation ultimately in tolerating what seems like an intolerable circumstance, right? Because ultimately we're like these kinds of strange, like myopic judges of what's going on, and then we get caught up in like something and we're spiraling in that one thing. And then you kind of go like, okay, this thing's doing something to me. It's doing some work. Okay, and there's like that feeling of acceptance. And just like for me personally, just the practice of saying like, that's okay. Let that thing do what it wants to do. Like I accept. I find that even the severity of what it is lessened, because it's actually quite a bit of work to like not let it come towards me. Like, you know what I mean? Like you're shoring up your ego and you're not allowing like something to happen. And so there's actually a lot of energy that goes to, you know what? It's quite painful, quite betrayed, quite shocked, whatever it is, right? There's so many ways to feel suffering in the material worlds, right? And then ultimately, right, what is Srila Guru Maharaj is saying is also all suffering is occurring within the mind, right? Which, like, the first time I heard that, I mean, I seriously felt like bowled over. It was like all the rebellion of just like, oh no, it can't be so. There's a million ways more to suffer. Like, what about, like coming up with these reasons? But we can meditate on it and these things can be explored at other times, but then you're going, oh, now you see where this verse from Bhagavad Gita is coming from, right? Udarid atmanatmanam natmanam avashadayat atmaiva hyatmano bandhu ripur eva natmanaha. Means the mind is, it's likened to a tool, right? And it can be your best friend or your worst enemy, right? So if you're experiencing these things through the filter of your mind, right off the bat, we know that, like, you know, there's a lot occurring. There's so many layers. And then if that's the thing of the infinities of things that we can focus on, is this one feeling of suffering that we're going through, then it's not accidental. Because you could just as easily not be focusing on that. Like, why is that catching you up? Really, like, of like all the things in the universe. Because it's coming there to teach us something. Has to be. Sometimes I'm like, you know, even like objectively speaking, I know that whatever the circumstances that's blowing me out is, like, in the terms of my life, it's not even like the hardest, it's not the biggest thing that I've dealt with. And somehow or other I can feel it really pushing, where it's just like, and then you go, okay, this is actually small. I know it's small. And somehow or other it's seeming to take up like an inordinate amount of like real estate internally, right? And so then you're going, okay, then it must be. Because it could just as easily not be. And you, even when we meet other people sometimes and they've gone through so much, and you go, they've really learned that particular lesson. And if it will come up again for them, it will be nothing, right? That same situation, they learned that thing, right? And then, of course, because you're on the journey towards the infinite, then the next thing comes. And then another very nice thing is, right, is like footsteps in the sands of time. Right, you're gonna meet someone and be like, I know exactly what you're, I feel you, like, I feel you so much. I remember feeling that feeling, right? And ultimately to try and give that on. So that's a little bit of like what the scripture says on prayashchitta, what the scripture says on tolerating, and what the scripture says ultimately on what's kind of consuming the field, so to speak. I'm not sure, so I hope that's a little bit helpful.
I think I'll just say one more thing, and then we should probably wrap up. But one of the things that's really helpful, Saraswati Thakur said this, but it's said many times, is that karma is not there to punish you. It's there to make a change inside of you. And when the change occurs, the karma's done. It's not like you have to, like, you know, just like, okay, now you're going to suffer for 150 years. It's not like that. There's some adjustment that needs to happen in consciousness. And the karma's coming to make that adjustment. So, like, to just trust that. And, like, bhunjana means endure. Bhunjana eva atmakritam vipakam. Vipakam means the result. I'm enduring the result of what I did. Right? But it's not just like that. It's hridvagvapur birvidadhan namaste. Turn into it with your heart, your speech, and your body. Hrid, vag, vapu. And namaste. Pay some respect to that. And watch it work. Right? Take the posture of resistancelessness. And then it's done. Like when Rai's saying, I felt the result be less when I do this. It's exactly. I mean, I'll just, you know, I may have said this to some of you before, but I used to have a real problem with banging my head all the time, and then punching whatever I hit my head on, and like as hard as, I mean, it was like white hot rage, just go right through me, pow, just smash it. And I'm like, could not stop doing it. Every time I hit my head, I was, ah. And so I'm trying to practice that. And literally, I just started to do this practice of like, okay, I hit my head and I was like white hot anger, and I'm like, I deserve this, I deserve this, I deserve this, I deserve this. You know, like, I don't know why I deserve it, I don't know how I deserve it, I just deserve this. And then I would literally felt like this, like almost like magic, where this like, you know, like the point of a cupboard door or something, you know, where it just hurt, you know, hurts and you're like, right, like, it just dissipated, like dissipated. It's like, whoa, like, what just happened? It's actually true. Like, you can actually practice this. Just turn into it, experience it, don't react, and see what it has in it for you. So, okay. Jai Shri Gurudev Ki Jai. We'll do Arati and then a nice
So the words for the arti are up there or on page 42.
जय परम तथाकथित भक्ति रक्षण श्री देव गोस्वामी महाराज की जय जय चैतन्य सार्वभौम आचार्य की जय जय ओम श्रीपाद जगत गुरु भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी महाराज प्रभुपाद की जय रूपानंद गुरुवार की जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद की जय श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंद राधा कुंद गिरि गोवर्धन की जय श्री वृंदावन धाम की जय धाम की जय यमुना देवी की जय महारानी की जय गंगा मई की जय गंगावती धाम की जय मायापुर योगी धाम की जय चैतन्य सारस्वत की जय सारस्वत मकान भक्त वृंद की जय की जय नववेद वैष्णव मंडल की जय हरिनाम संकीर्तन की जय जय श्रीमद भक्ति विग्रह न्यासी महाराज की जय महाप्रसाद की जय एकादशी तिथि की जय ओम प्रेमानंद Naya Vasudev Jaya Krishna Hey, just FYI, everybody. Almost everybody in the community is going to California next week. There will be a small program on Sunday, but